Wow, I completely forgot about this whole shebang because I think this entire mindset has become such a cope that every time it comes up, people just kind of write it off and ignore it as just like fanboy whining. But I really do think this needs to be analyzed and just kind of like thrown out into the trash because this is one of the most pathetic copes in the Nintendo community. And it happens every single time we get a new Fire Emblem, right? Every single time we get one of these, we get people coming out of the crawling out of the woodwork to complain about this. Like I've extensively covered like the Arlo mindset of people who are just like, oh man, I'm not a fan of my Fire Emblem, and I'll never be a fan of Fire Emblem, and I don't want to see new Fire Emblem games. I've talked about that before. Okay, and I talked about how pathetic that is. But on the flip side, you have the opposite end of the spectrum where you have so-called super fans who want you to believe the franchise fell off a long time ago and that the games haven't been good in a really long time. Now, let's completely ignore the fact that that isn't fucking true, okay? Let's actually examine what these people are actually trying to say because it is downright ridiculous because this has been a thing that's been permeating since Awakening's release, right? Because Awakening, of course, came out, was a huge hit on 3DS. It was a cultural phenomenon, one of the best games in the system. But immediately you had people coming out saying that, like, well, actually, this Fire Emblem isn't anything like the old ones. Real Fire Emblem took itself seriously, and it didn't have any of this romance crap, which, first of all, is not true, because romance has been in FE since, I believe... 4, like even like the original, if you consider the fact that Marth marries Shida at the end of the original. So like again, this has always been like an integral part of the IP, the franchise. Like the idea that it wasn't, that this was always some like deep dark fantasy RPG is just ridiculous. Okay, like it hasn't been that dark since like 4. Okay, so like these guys want you to like try and believe that like, oh, back in the day, Fire Emblem was this serious strategy RPG. Like it never really was, bro. Like I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know what you're talking about. But like more than that though. More than that. The mindset for a lot of these people is that like the older FEs, like pre-Awakening, were like better somehow, and that they had like more strategic elements, they had more content, they had better stories, they had better gameplay, and that just isn't true. Like, the simple fact of the matter is that post-Awakening, we have gotten more variety, we have gotten more innovation, and we've gotten like radically different like games that really experiment with the concept, right? We went from like, you know, Fate and the weird root system to Three Houses and the simulation stuff to like Engage and like the fan servicey stuff to like, you know, Fortune's Weave and like to being like this a really elaborate RPG. Like the mindset of these people that like somehow the older games were like better is just completely wrong. Okay, it just doesn't really make any sense at all. Like it was Awakening that really introduced like all these crazy features that made this game like these games way more popular among like general audiences. Like of course you had the marriages, you had like the general structure, you had like features like the Street Pass stuff, you had like the art style. Like there were a bunch of elements that came together to make Awakening like what it was and to make it like such a spectacular release. Like the idea that like the games used to be better just doesn't hold up under any kind of scrutiny, especially when you think about this series' development history and its release schedule, because we did not get a single Fire Emblem game released in the States until FE7, okay? Like that was the very first one in 2003, okay? Awakening came out in 2012. Like this is important because we are now, if you started with Awakening, that was your first FE, you have been with the franchise longer than people who stuck with who started with FE7. Okay, and then stopped with Awakening. Okay. So like Awakening fans now who have stuck with the franchise now have like more street cred than the kind of person who like allegedly stopped after Awakening. Okay, like they have they're more well aware of what the franchise is now. They're more engaged with it. They know more about it. But like the mindset among like these like hardline old school fans is that like people are just like bandwagon fans and they don't know anything about like real FE, and that they don't have any standards. But like the reality is that like the older fans are just boomers who can't really accept that the franchise has kind of grown and evolved past them. You know, it's a lot like how NES fans for a long time couldn't accept that like Super Mario Bros. Was topped with like New Super Mario Bros. Or that the original Legend of Zelda was topped by like Ocarina or like Twilight Princess or Breath of the Wild, right? Like you just see a lot of people who just kind of refuse to acknowledge like the reality of like the state of their franchise is that like it's successful, it's ongoing, and because of that, there are a lot more popular and successful titles than like the ones they grew up with, essentially. And what's interesting about this is that these guys want to role play and pretend that they've been with the series for like longer than when FE7 came out. So they want to pretend that they played like the older games, like fans translated on ROMs in like the 90s, which not only is like grossly impractical, but like is not an experience that any of these people could possibly have had. And you look at like the history of this kind of thing, you know, for a long time people thought these kind of people were saying that Star Fox 2 was the best Star Fox game. When it finally got re-released, nobody cared. You know, for a long time, people were saying Earthbound was one of the best games ever made. Now that it's been re-released, no one cares. Like, there's this tendency among, like, people to assume that games that never leave Japan are automatically better, and that, like, they pretend to be fans of them for, like, street cred and to, like, LARP as hardcore players. But the reality is, like, in a lot of instances, these guys have no real experiences with the game at all. And in a lot of cases, like, if they do play it, they can't actually read the text, and so they have no idea what's actually going on with the plot or the story or whatever. So again, like we what people are describing when it comes to like Fortune's Weave, like this idea that like it's alienating to me because it's not a real FE, like that doesn't really mesh up with anything. Because like I'm seeing a lot of people try and say that like, oh man, an Avatar character, oh man, we didn't get that in classic FEs. Like we had an Avatar as early as like FE7. Okay, like this isn't like some new uncommon thing. You know, they want to bitch about like romances, they want to bitch about the character designs, they want to bitch about like the time travel mechanic. Like all of these are like pretty accepted popular mechanics that have been like in Fire Emblem for over a decade at this point. And yet we're still in this like weird phase where everybody wants to do this thing where they're just like, no, it's not as good as it used to be. It's different. It's not good. It's bad. And it's like, it is a straight up delusional cope. And I really have to wonder like how much longer this can continue. Because like I've noticed like in particular like with this release that like these people have been doing their song and dance again. They've come out of the woodwork to try and claim that they're the real FE fans. And like at this point they're getting laughed at. Like this is straight up like Gen 1er syndrome. You know, like when Gen 4 first came out, like, you know, Gen 1ers were like the majority, and like they were legit telling people that there were only 151 Pokemon and that nothing besides Gen 1 mattered, and that like you know, Pokemon was a dying fad. And then by like the time like Gen 5 came out, like they were becoming a joke, and then like Gen 6 came out and they were like pretty much extinct. Like it feels like we're in that period for Fire Emblem, because like these guys can't be nostalgic for a period of history that never fucking happened, because FE was never a thing in the NES days. You know, we have never seen an official release of Fire Emblem 4 in the West. So, like, the endless attempts by, like, the community to act like this is some, like, amazing game that's way better than, like, everything that's come out since, it's, like, it really just doesn't hold up under any kind of scrutiny at all. Like, you can't even really, like, do that, like, that old argument of saying that, like, the games aren't dark anymore. Because, like, Three Houses is probably one of the darkest games Nintendo's ever produced. Let's be real. Like, again, like, we keep seeing this happen. We keep seeing these games, like, come out, be successful, and yet, like, the narrative is always that, like, well, by the next game, it's gonna fail. Like, Engage was not a failure, but, like, it was significantly less popular than Three Houses. If Engage could not sell significantly less than Radiant Dawn, you're completely fucked, okay? You're never going to have, like, the pre-FE numbers again. There's never going to be, like, this massive fall-off period. There's never going to be this decline. Like, you're just completely done. The franchise is mainstream now. It's here to stay. There's nothing you can do about it. By the way, these people who, like, glaze classic FE, like, do you see them talk about, like, the remakes of FE 1 or 3 or Radiant Dawn? Because I can tell you for a fact that, like, all of the modern FEs, like, post-Awakening, are better than all of that, okay? Like, the series was on thin ice for 3 games straight, okay? And, like, the recovery that Awakening gave it was, like, remarkable. But, like, the simple fact of the matter is that, like, a lot of these people can't accept the fact that, like, these games were niche for a long time and are now popular and successful, and now they won't, like, shut the fuck up about it. Like, they have to do this every single freaking time. And it's high time that we start, like, you know, laughing at these people before they can open their stupid mouths, okay? Like, it's been a long time coming, but, like, these guys need to go the way of the Gen 1er. They need to be put down. They have to be, like, laughed at by the community at large. And, like, there's so much hype and enthusiasm around this game anyway that I don't really think that, like, there's really much that anyone can do about it. But, like, this has been going on legit since Awakening came out. Like, a lot of these poser fans who want to say that the series fell off or it's lost its soul or whatever, and it's just very observably not true. It's really something that I do think the community at large needs to speak out about, because it has been out of hand for a very, very long time, and none of these people know anything about the IP at this stage. You know, the amount of people I've seen who get basic facts wrong about this, it's laughable. It is really genuinely ridiculous. So I don't know how much longer, like, this can continue. I hope this is the last time. I do hope that, like, any, like, member of the community that tries with this whole cope that, like, old FEs are better, like, you're really gonna have to, like, answer some very basic questions. Like, are you really suggesting that Awakening, which came out 13 years ago now, are you really suggesting that's not an older FE game? Like, okay, so, like, are you gonna argue that, like, Awakening is better than Fortune's Weave? So are you going to acknowledge that Awakening was a good game? Like, again, if you really think about what these people are saying critically, like, none of it makes any sense at all. But that's the problem, is that a lot of people don't think about this critically.